Cancellation came as Tel Aviv announced that they were setting out to tender for more new settlements to be built in East Al-Quds, which is the eastern part of Jerusalem. The Palestinians have said from the outset that the negotiations and the peace talks depended entirely, more than anything else, on the stopping of building settlements. Netanyahu has literally thumbed his finger at them. And of course, it brought the negotiations to the brink of collapse. John Kerry went on Monday night, very late, unscheduled, to try and talk sense to Benjamin Netanyahu, to try to make Netanyahu see reason. But Netanyahu is as stubborn as a mule, and he's got no reason to worry about how America is going to handle him. He knows he can get away with it. He can kill and he can bomb and he can steal from the Palestinians. He can insult the American president. He can argue with the American government. And the Americans can do nothing. He has got AIPAC in power there and other Jewish lobbies ready to fund Congress, to buy Congress, to make sure Israel gets its way, and to compel America to donate $11 million every day of the year to Israel, a very rich state where America has a lot of people living in poverty. They have nuclear armaments. So as the only nuclear equipped nation in the Middle East, they are able to thumb their nose at America in a big way. The Palestinian president, Mahmoud Abbas, saw no hope for peace. He's a man that has had to become accustomed for a very long time that he plays on a very unlevel playing field. But the negotiations are anything but negotiations among equals. In fact, it is a very unequal situation. The Palestinians in the weaker position are oppressed and held captive by an all-powerful Israel, backed by the Americans. Palestine should have been a member of the United Nations from day one. From the beginning, the nation of Palestine should have been a member of the United Nations. The U.S. should be looking now to disarm Israel because its nuclear weapons are in the hands of very unstable leadership, a leadership without ethics, without conscience, a leadership that has attacked the USS Liberty, the intelligence-gathering ship of the Americans, in international waters in 1967. The U.S. was attacked in 1967, and they tried to sink the ship, and they killed 34 American servicemen, and they made the rest of the American survivors swear to secrecy that they would not talk about it, and for 40 years it was kept hidden. Israel, based on its past record, is likely to attack America again. Israel is bent only on getting its own way. The Palestinians, well, America is helping them by going to set free Jonathan Pollard, the Jewish spy. But we should also be looking for the freedom of Mordecai Vanunu, the whistleblower, as a young man who let us all know that Israel had nuclear weapons in Dimona in the Negev desert. He told us 28 years ago he has spent 18 years in solitary, and 10 years he has been denied his right to leave Israel, where he no longer wants to live, and he, as a Christian, wants to live in the Christian Western world and has nothing to do with Israel. So for the Palestinians, I think the world has to take a step aside, deal with Israel, ask Israel to show some signs that they're going towards peace. Peace talks are supposed to be a place of compromise. Israel suffers from wild dreams of expansion. And in the last 2 years, after they have been killing people, they have continued, as they did before, rationing the water. 85% of the water in Palestine goes to the Jewish people, and the other 15% of the water is divided among the Palestinians. An example of this is Hebron, where 400 Jews use 85% of the water, and 120,000 Palestinians get to use 15% of the water. Human rights is where we must begin. Israel must be disbanded if it's not going to do a peace now, because while Israel is at war with the Palestinians, a war with an army ranged against civilians, the world is in a situation where we are at risk of a nuclear attack from Israel at any point. If they cannot see reason now, we should look at last to disband the state, to give these people the passports that their grandparents came to Israel with, and send them back to the respective nations of their grandparents, and bid them a bon voyage, and tell them they must live within the law in whatever country they go to. And this is the only way forward, because the world risks a terrible nuclear disaster, and the Palestinian people deserve their freedom.